in 11th place, we have Albury Outlaws. Predicted 16th, up 5 from their predictions. So I believe Albury Outlaws were
Dang.
the biggest climber in terms of their predictions. Over the course of the tournament, they only climbed. So they started in 14th, went up 2 in Cascade 1. Oh, they did go down once, sorry, after Cascade 1 to 13th, and then climbed 2 on the last day, winning a bunch of games out of blue base, which everyone seemed to not like. But we might talk about the base stats at the end, actually, that are pretty interesting. But yeah, on the team, we had Whippet, Pat King, Campster, Vexim, and Brownie. Run, take it away.
I would once again like to entirely blame Whippet for ruining my predictions. I was told that she said these guys were going to come last. I was told that was a comment she made, so I'm like, perfect. If their own team doesn't have faith, I'm predicting them low. And then they played properly and like well, and like you kind of expect these players to be able to, but I don't like it. But no, these guys. I think the Aubrey playstyle of Nexus just translates really well to these H2 packs. Like first day, Camster walks in. I go, yep, he's very solid player at Nats. And then he just starts railing me, and railing is training. Like he rocks up on Thursday night, and it's like, oh, he already knows how to play H2. Sick. He's hitting insane shots that I can't hit. That's nice, I guess. They picked up the packs very well. I think it was that transition from Nexus and that playstyle transitions over well, and they played that well. Whippet was a player who I thought felt a bit lost in Bendigo, but this comp, absolutely insane. Like, it was kind of like we saw her playing like she was at Rumble, but even further elevated. Was that really solid brawling player? Doesn't give you any senses unless, like, never gives you a free sensor. Always makes you work for kills, which is really, really good to see. And Brownie, the new player, stepped up. He seems solid. Vexum, who has been kicking around the scene for ages, and we've just been wanting to see him in a nationals competition. He's a joy to watch play. He's just that like really coordinated, fancy flips and sort of Nexus style player, if that makes sense. I don't know. There's a very particular look to a Nexus player, and he just encapsulates. I thought it was great to watch them play. And yeah, packing, I do feel struggled a bit on these packs. I don't think they suit him as well in the playstyle. But yeah, good to see them playing blue. I don't agree with them being like, it's just because they can't shoot the base. No, you guys are good at defending it. You guys had a very good defensive structure, and I watched it, and that was why you guys were winning from blue. So
I think they had a very good float to green, because I remember reffing a game as well. They had a very good float to green from blue, which I would attribute a lot of their victories from blue for. On the Pack King note, I just like to point out, I felt pretty comfy in the V at red. Like I had pre-nets 1 last lining. Every red game I'll just be in the V at red all the time. Came back to pre-nets 3, felt pretty good again. Felt pretty good hitting that like flick shot on like the back door or the left door, I believe you guys call it. But Pat King probably had the best success rate shooting me out of the V out of everyone. In fact, I don't remember shooting him once in the game that we faced them when we were red, and he got me out like 4 times and got his team a bunch of aces. So well done to Pat King for that. And then yeah, I definitely remember Fuggan and I felt pretty good attacking all of these bases. But Whippet was one of the last lanes that was very disciplined, and like you said, right, like she'll never give you the sensor. You know, you very much have to like work for it, and you know, you have to make the right play, otherwise she's gonna ping you. So yeah, that was the 2 players that really stood out to me personally. Blitzer, did you have anything you'd like to add to the Outlaws?
Just wanted to mention Vexum. Like I'd never heard of Vexum, or never. I don't think I'd ever played a comp at Albury where he'd played. And then I got to play him in his first game, and I was like, "Holy, where's this guy been?" Like, yeah, he just looked like a player straight off the bat. And he said, "Yeah, I've been kicking around for a while, but I just haven't played much, but played any nationals yet." So, no, great to have him in the scene, and hopefully he comes to this Nats and many more, because he's looks like a real player. And where was Whippet playing? Because she has a tag ratio of 1.29, which is incredible. Which she was in Arslan.
And doors, I thought, like, and her base ratio, like, she was just generally a beast everywhere. Like, a 0.89 tag ratio. That's almost a basic game. Like she's attacking as well, and on the doors was where I mainly saw her. Like she was just great.
Interesting. I only ever saw
That was
her
why I was
last
so
time.
confused. Yeah, I was so confused because it was like a 1.929 tag ratio, but she's got 0.9 bases a game. Like, what role is she doing here? I couldn't quite figure it out. But maybe they have a different setup at each color. I'm not sure, but clearly beasting it wherever she's going. Yeah, but I didn't actually play these guys a whole bunch from memory. But yeah, the main memory I have was just how good Vexen was. Are these guys coming with the same combination for Nats?
It's close. I think they are down Invictus. So Invictus will be joining them for Nationals. And Brownie wasn't actually on the team for Nationals, but after playing pre-Nats, they're like, hey, can we just like slide him in? He played well. Like, let's just add him into the team. So now he's on the team. So it's great. So yeah, we'll be seeing all these guys plus Invictus at Nats.
Yeah, well, if these guys can play blue well, then they got one up on us.
Same.
Do we have any final notes for the Albury Outlaws before we move on? Maybe any points of improvement for them?
Maybe Campster needs to tidy up around the base a little bit. That's about it.
Yeah.
A few denials there, but
Literally,
yes.
I watched him train Thursday night and went add to fantasy team, and then he was good, but he kept copping denials. So next time, Campster, keep the fantasy up.
Just an enthusiastic player, that's right.
That's one word. Yeah, he loves it. He always looks like he's having more fun than anyone else in there. Alrighty. We'll move on to our 10th place team now. We have Storm. Predicted 9th, so they're down 1 from their predictions. Interestingly, they were one of the teams that moved the least on the ladder. So they started round robin 11th, climbed to 10th in Cascade 1, and then stayed in 10th for the rest of the tournament. So on the team we had Shock, Moss, Spread, Firebird, Bones, and Cyrex. Yeah, Blitzer, tell us a bit about how these guys played.
Well, Storm, I think I was saying before the stream, if I was to say one word about Storm, it was par. They were so consistent. If they were playing golf, they would have scored a par for the tournament. And that's a credit to how well organised and structured they are. Like they're just they're the same in training in Queensland. They're very well prepared by Cyrex, and I'm sure there's other leadership within the team that contribute to that as well. But Lauren's a very smart player, and they didn't really drop any games they shouldn't have. They did have a couple of good wins. They beat us in a game, and come finals, I think they had a terrible first game of the finals in green, and then a good second game from red, beating Rampage. And then they got second to the Dragorustaceans and second to Rampage from red. So playing a team like the Dragorustaceans would have been their worst nightmare, because Dragorustaceans, as we'll get to later, tend to like to throw things into a bit of chaos, and that's not really how Storm like to play. They like a standard game to play out. So yeah, in terms of, can I go straight into improvements?
Yeah, sure.
In terms of how they set up, I think, so if we look at it, Shock was doing quite well. His base average was 1.4. From Shock, I think it was Bread and Firebird who were probably their other main attackers in there. And I don't think they're being quite as effective. They needed another, and also in terms of tags, they weren't quite getting the number of tags that they needed. So what I found is that the top tier teams generally had 2 players that were scoring around 50 plus tags. And Shock was doing quite well, but they were struggling they needed like a second kind of striker to be getting those tags. And they were copying a few denials as well, which kind of tends to suggest to me that they were probably trying to attack with 2 people too often, and they didn't have that third person pushing up. 2-man attack in this arena tends to get you denied more than you'd like, is my guess. Is that fair to say? Oh, except for if you're the Vikings, and then you can go out with a 2-man attack and get 10 bases. That's fine.
No,
Let's go out with a 1-man attack
in our lives, but you know,
you used the 3-man attack once that I remember, but we'll get to that later.
Was Twinkles the third, the dickhead?
He was.
Of course he was. He was not meant to be there, but you know.
Yes, but all in all, they thought they played like they probably finished around what were they predicted ninth. Yeah, so they finished pretty close to where they were predicted, and they probably just need a little bit more coordination with their attack to reduce those denials and get a few more destroys, and also just maybe pick up a few more tags for those 2 players that need to be getting up into that 50 tag range.
This team, we said it in the prediction stream, but Shock got to play on his team and he went off with it. Like we were expecting well, but man, he crushed it on attack. Like for a second year player to just be like, I'm gonna just put the team on my shoulders and let's go with like a very experienced team, like that's sick. He was going off, and really speaks to like you give him the freedom and he's an insane player. It was weird to see Firebird. I don't know what happened. Was it the H2 factor? Like, did he get too comfortable moving to Queensland and playing Helios? I don't know. I'd love to know the story behind that, because Firebird's normally like one of those players that plays towards the top end and gets those pack points and that tag ratio on the bases. So I'm very curious to know what happened there. And apart from that, you've got your Queensland players playing a solid Queensland format and playing it at a solid ability. Like these guys were the most. We know the skill level of your team. You're going to finish exactly here. And the only surprise I think was Firebird not quite performing as well as he could have, which drops him down to 10th, I guess. Like, these guys just like played a very solid structure, very structured. The skill level of their players, and they played their ability level. Was essentially what I saw from these guys.
Yeah, on the topic of what Butzer was saying, if you really, the game can't be put on the shoulders of one person getting lots of tags. You really do need at least a second person getting heaps of tags. If you were to look at this team, you would very much expect Firebird to be that other person getting the tags. So hopefully Prenet's 3 has been a very productive experience for him, and he's going to come back Nationals time. He's going to be able to fill that position on the team of getting bulk tags and getting lots of bases and stuff. Do we have anything else to add for Storm before we move on?
I would add, it was really cool to see Cyrix sitting a lot of games. So Cyrix was really letting Bones and their whole team get the experience that they need, because Cyrix is kind of like experienced enough and like played the mids twice already, really pushed the team into it and just went, I'm gonna sit a bunch, you guys need the training and I'll guide from the sidelines. So I thought that was really cool to see.
Yes, a quick kudos to Bones for having a tag ratio of 0.92 as a player. This is his first Zoltak comp, right? Like a pre-nat Soul Zoltak comp.
Yeah, he's only just jumped onto the team within the last few months, so it was a bit of a surprise to himself that an opportunity opened up. He got the invite. He was like, "Oh, cool! I'm going to Nats." So he's pretty raw, and to come out with a 92% tag ratio is an absolute credit to him. It's very. I was really surprised when I saw that he'd achieved that. So big hats off to him. And just to mirror what you said on Shock as well, I certainly didn't mention him enough in my chat earlier, but he is killing it at home, and he just brought all that form into this tournament as well. And he is he's going to be an absolute machine. This year and into the future as well. He's really starting to show, like he's 1.07, and he was out there on the front line, out in the field, running things. So he was, he killed it, and a base average of 1.42. So he can crack bases. So he's their monster, and they just need another person to lift to somewhere near that level in order to sort of climb the ladder. That's probably big summary for them.
No worries. Wow. Any last things to add before we move on, guys?
Moss is awesome too.
Moss is awesome too. Bread's awesome too.
So is Brett.
They're all awesome.
They're all awesome.
Yeah, Moss with the 1.2. Was he last lining?
Yeah, he's doing a lot of last line. Yeah, he's gonna be a beast as well. He's still really young too.
Yeah. Yeah, this team is just like, let the young guns do it. We're just gonna kick back and relax. Like.
Alrighty. Moving on to our 9th place team. We have Dragorustaceans, the second of our teams to not provide a photo, so I have provided an illustration. If it doesn't make sense, I don't really feel like explaining it. So anyway, on the team we have VG Master, Gustus, Dragon, Shifter, and Garn or Yarn. So in terms of their positioning throughout the comp, round robin they were 6th. They dropped 3 positions in Cascade 1 to 9th, then climbed once to 8th, and then ended up dropping 1 spot on the last stretch to 9th place. So they were up from their predictions by 2, predicted 11th. And yeah, I guess in terms of stats to highlight, so VG Master had the second highest denies against with 1.69. Poor fella was getting torn a new one. And then Gustus had the third highest denies against with 1.63. So well done to those boys. You know, taking the miss every shot you don't take very seriously and taking Putz's advice from earlier very seriously. Yeah, Runt, take it away. Tell us a bit about the Dragorustaceans.
Man, this team's chaos, as expected. Where to start? Like they wanted to push the dumps in this arena, and I respect that. They do it in every arena, and they go, "We're gonna dump here. We're gonna make it work." And some of the time, it did. It worked a lot better in round robin, I'll say, before teams got wise to how to counter it and like how to hold them out. But when you can just overwhelm people with numbers, it works. Gustus, I thought was playing a lot better this comp than last comp. I think he started trying essentially. His tag ratio was still low. The whole time, this team, they just like to stand outdoors and get shot. But
and I guess
multiple
also
their way
like
through
with the dump heavy play style, I
Yeah.
think you kind of expect some less awesome tag ratios as
Yeah,
well, right? He had a very
exactly.
good base average of 1.44. That's one of the highest of the tournament.
Right, like watching him play, he looked very impressive in comparison to the last comp we saw him. But yeah, the most noteworthy thing I thought about this team was VG was not the powerhouse we were expecting him to be, not the powerhouse he was in Pre-Nuts 1, but the team still performed better than we were expecting him to. So the team pulled through, it looks, but VG, I'm very curious why he had struggled a lot more this time than last time. I know he was sort of sent to like, oh, just put pressure on them so they don't put pressure on us, which is a tough role, but I think VG is normally very solid at it, very, very impressive at doing that. So I'm wondering if maybe as a player that like is very good at exploiting long lines of sight, and now that we've sort of tightened up the arena and closed a lot of those up at Pre-Nuts, that he's sort of just having to like brawl close to people, which is less of his playstyle. So I'm not really sure, but I'm curious what happened there. But yeah, I thought the whole team pulled through a bit better on this one, and it would have been interesting to see him play it at standard a bit more. I think a balance of like 50-50 is maximum what you'd want for dumping.
Yeah, I was actually surprised how good their tag ratios were for the strategies they were playing, because it's very easy to cop up 70 or 80% tag ratio when you're dumping and bouncing between bases and doing all kinds of stuff. Yeah, clearly, look, the base averages, every single player on the team, a base average above 1. So that was their prime objective, is even if they held for a little while, they'll do some kind of mid-game dump situation, which, as we'll talk about later, can be a very, very good strategy. But as a core strategy, as a core strategy, I'd really like to see these guys focus more on playing standard strategies, because there's kind of a limit to how you will upset some teams with the way they play, but there's a limit to how far up the ladder you can go with it, because if it becomes too predictable, then people will just learn to counter it, and you'll end up middle of the ladder essentially. So yeah, it would be nice to see these guys focus more on playing more than standard strategies, and they've got the skill on the team to actually challenge and move up the ladder. But if they play that style, that it'll put a ceiling on how far they can go with it, I believe.
Yeah, I think they're playing strategies that worked a lot better with their old team composition than with their new one. I think a concept of dumps and dumping teams is you want a very even spread of skill for a dumping team, because you want all those players to be capable of getting through the base and excess skill isn't wasted. But I think this team is more of a staggered team, and in a staggered team, you kind of want to leverage the fact that you have those really insane players like VG that can go absolutely off when they're not trying to push a dump through or just be in that shit fight. Like, so I think, yeah, playing a bit more standard strategies with this team will suit them better.
I would like to point out that the Dragons gave us a big scare. I think we only versed them, we might have versed them twice, but one time before the game we were like, all right, these guys are going to dump. We planned out what we were going to do, and we were like, cool, we got this in the bag. And the game started, and then we saw like 3 of them rock up at a base, and so we were like, oh, they've dumped. Fuggin proceeded to take Exile to the blue base, who just like put 2 shots on, and then their shifter was just kind of like not even really hiding. Like that, they were playing blue, and she was on the base side of the Dorito, and Jimmy started putting shots on from the half height, watching side, and shifter just turned and went bang. So that was a good start, and then the Dragons proceeded to get 4 bases, and then we got none, and then I think Outlaws were in that game, and they got 1 or 2, and that was the first few minutes of that game. So yeah, they gave us a fright. We managed to just scrape a win, like barely, by like 500 points, but yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. That was probably like the biggest scare like we had. We, felt pretty comfy, and then the first 3 minutes we were just like down 4 bases and just getting destroyed, and we denied. We're like, oh my god, what's going on? Like you said, just kind of chaos, absolute chaos. Yeah. Anyway,
well, on that note, yep. I need to add that they took us out doing one of their chaos games. so yeah, we didn't respond correctly, and we lost the game. So yeah, hats off to you. Well done, guys. We were very happy that we didn't have to verse them in the finals, because with those kinds of games, anything can happen, and that's the scary thing about it, is that you can easily drop if things don't go your way amongst the chaos. So. Hopefully,
in terms of points of improvement for these guys, are we all in agreement that it's just they really need to, like, having the dumps as a strategy in your tool belt is really good, especially like if you're not in a favorable position and you're like, well, we need to do something. Throwing it to chaos can be very favorable, but I think if they really want to break into the top tier properly and like be able to like stay there. Because they did, like, after round robin, they finished 6th, like, around all these, like, powerhouse teams. But for them to be able to stay there, they do need to add another layer of just, like, a good standard game. Does anyone else have anything else to add?
I think a key component of that standard game, which is why they might not be playing it as much as they should be, is I don't think they really have the anchor trained up to do so. Looking at it, I'm pretty sure that anchor is shifter, right? I feel like shifter's best when they're on a yeah. I feel like shifter's best when they're on a dot coming, so that feels like wasted potential. But I don't know who you'd make. Play that anchor position. I feel like shifter as an anchor also needs to push themselves to play that sort of fast, reliable anchor and push their skills, as opposed to relying on some of the more memey gimmicky strats. Like, very often I see them just in a dumb spot, like, this is gonna get them good when they don't expect me here, and it works. But I think as soon as you start playing it at a 2-week comp and people get wise to what you're doing, you're really gonna miss out on having that experience of just grinding it out as an anchor and practicing in the standard positions and practicing to play that really solid game. And I think whether it's training shifter up or training someone else up, they need that reliable anchor.
I think Garn would be good for that, just because he's old like me and our timing starts to go. So putting us inside the base is a great place for us. Yeah. But it means that you've got 2 really good commas on the doors, like Dragon and Shifter are like loud and you get easy to hear and reliable. And having them on doors, I think, would be good. And Garn's an experienced player. He's one of those players that would be able to really refine each last line position really well. He's got the technical skill to be able to like move between the different positions in the base and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Get going some phase of discipline and you're set as a team. So I think that might be the direction to shift the team dynamic to.
No worries. Any last bits we want to add to Dragorustaceans before we move on?
And that way you're not relying on Khan's comms when he gets sick inevitably.
True. Nothing else to add, gentlemen.
All good, I think.
All good. Hopefully, VG Master and Gustus can clean up their shots on bases without getting the base. That'd be good as well. Anyway, moving on. 8th place, Rampage. Predicted 8th, finished 8th. Round robin, they actually finished in 5th, which was very commendable, especially given the teams that were there. Cascade 1, they dropped 3 to 8th. Cascade 2, they dropped 1 to 9th. And then on the last day, they were able to jump back to 8th spot. So on the team, we have Spider, Zam, Polchrome, Princess, Sad Lamp, and Wildcard. So the same kind of roster we've seen the last 2 pre-nuts as well, which is maybe what we could attribute the very high placing after the round robin. But I guess in terms of notable stats, Spider had the 3rd highest denies 4 with 1.59. So he was just destroying people trying to get his base. Spider also had the 2nd highest tag ratio with 1.62. Yeah, Run. What do you got to say about these guys?
Yeah, so Spider, crazy high denial ratio. It's impressive, but almost expected for a player of that caliber. What's interesting is seeing Polchrome on a stat almost as high at 1.47. And I've definitely I definitely saw that. You put a shot in their base, their 3 defenders are out, and their 2 sort of pushed out players like Polchrome, Spider, Zam, whoever it is sort of around and listening and just coming screaming in those doors for that denial and just like full lunging, sending that lunge. They've got that very clear practice of a lunge-based arena back at Code Red, so they're very practiced of just you need to fully send your body full Superman to get that denial and that shot on that player. So I think that definitely comes through in the denial stat of that home playstyle. It's very interesting watching how players play based on their home arena, and I think that's one of the factors of the Code Red arena is stand behind a panel and lunge it. So that was good to see. But yeah, these guys they had. I know they're not happy with their results, so we don't need to sugarcoat it. Like they had the potential to climb so much higher. They were playing higher games, winning harder games earlier on in the competition, and then in finals, it seemed like nothing clicked, and they seemed because the whole time, every comp, Rampage, Sabres usually plays a super defensive strat, and then uses that in finals to win finals with that super defensive. This time they did the opposite. They went sort of super offensive in finals, and it didn't seem to pay off at all. Trying to match the competition when you're at a low tier, I'm not sure is the play when you can just beat them pack on pack and just play better laser tag than them, which is what this team was capable of. It was good to see though. Standout was when I first saw them in the arena was Wildcard to me, because he was someone that got quite railed on the first 2 pre-nuts, but this comp he seemed very solid and reliable in that last line position, and I didn't see him as a weakness on the team at all anymore. Like he was playing exactly his role and playing it solid, so that was really good to see him stepping into that. And yeah, I mean Zam's always insane, Spider's always insane, so yeah. What do you guys reckon?
I think I'd like to highlight so Polchrome was one of the players that favored playing in the sandwich at blue over the other position, and I understand why, because he was Fuggin's kryptonite. Fuggin was getting pretty good at clearing out like all of the bases. Blue base, I think especially, he felt pretty good about, but there Polchrome was sitting in the sandwich, just making him shed tears and tearing him a new one. So kudos to Polchrome for his blue last line in the sandwich position. Yeah, we versed the Rampage guys a few times. I think they took one off of us. We took one off of them. And yeah, I don't know. They're just playing you know, good laser tag. They're all pack on pack. We were kind of talking about like who we feel like has the timing as Aftershock, and it was like, well, obviously the Hobart guys have it, but like the Rampage guys, all of their H2 timing was like really good. Like we're just getting black packed, like especially players like Zam specifically. And then yeah, I remember everyone having a moment after the Rampage game being like, yeah, I just got like black packed for a few deaths. That was cool. And then yeah, Spider as always is just like super difficult to shoot no matter where he is. Even if he's in the open at the last moment, suddenly he's on a panel, and then you've realized that you've got like nothing, and he's he's lulled you into thinking that we're just going to take a duel in the open. No, that guy's always going to end up on a panel. He never takes a duel in the open. So yeah, he was very difficult to win standoffs against. He's gotten really good at the just paneling and kind of like leading people to like you're taking a paneling duel on each side of a panel, and then you go for a shot and then you miss, and you go for another shot and you miss. You start panicking and you start like leaving your phaser out a little bit further, and he's just waiting for that barrel and just snagging it as soon as he can. So yeah, those are some notable things for me. But so have you got anything to add yourself?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know exactly what happened in those finals games for them. Certainly the last one, they didn't lose by much. But I've overall, from a tournament perspective, I felt like I saw progress in them this tournament. Like you were saying earlier, they were, historically they've been too defensive, and when the game's slipping away from them, they, don't go aggressive when they need to, essentially to try and catch up. And I noticed it more this tournament. Like there was a lot more games where they didn't allow that to happen, but it still happened a couple of times. And it happened at least once in the final. I think they lost a game to Storm, where I think Storm might have had 2 bases and they had none. So it happened a couple of times, but I think it's still a progression for them because they're still a reasonably inexperienced team. Like they're mid-level experience, you might say. They've still got things to learn, and it's good that they've added to their game the ability to go more aggressive when they need to. And now it's about having the experience to know when to put which strategy into play, essentially. And I felt like Peanuts 3 was a great step in the right direction. And yeah, it's just playing more games for them and learning from each game. Don't get too down on themselves when mistakes are made. Zam's the captain, isn't he? Zam runs the games. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's hard. It's hard to do. And there's only one way to get good at it, and that's to not be so good at it for ages until you just start getting good at it. It'll start to click. They've certainly got the talent on their team. You can see from their tag ratios, and they've got a superstar in Spider. They've got the talent on their team to progress up the ladder, and it's just about knowing how to execute each strategy. Now they've got a few different strategies that they can execute. They can go aggressive, they can go defensive, and it's knowing when to put on when to pull the trigger on which one, essentially, for them from here on in.
Yeah, it was strange to see because I think they figured out some of the strategies better than everyone else in the competition. Like some of the things they were doing, like they had just a chain from red to green where they just controlled that half of the arena with like 5 players in a chain, and they just rotate their players through that green base. Like they were really leveraging that close door, just put a bunch of numbers on it and make it hell for the defenders and just run your whole team through it. And that's a really good way to play Hobart, of like leveraging your defenders, and I thought they were really good at it. So yeah, it's just I'm expecting that we'll see their potential at Nats. They've worked these high level things out, and I'm expecting to see it at Nats. It was just a shame it didn't click in the final ascensions for this comp.
But so you got anything else to add?
I think you guys have summed it up really well. Yeah, and I think these guys are definitely a team that, like, from what I've seen now, I'm confident these guys can move up the ladder. I feel like they've, and you got to be a bit brave as well in there. Like, it's to go aggressive in games. It's sometimes you got to take a risk, leave your defense undermanned. So that's the next progress for them, is to know when to do that. You don't do it all the time, but sometimes you need to.
Okay, so well done to Rampage. Looking forward to seeing how you boys go at Nationals. And in 7th place, Hobart Archangels. So they were predicted 6th, down 1 from their predictions. On the team, we have Sega, Jellyhawk, Mantis, Easy Point, Shurikitty, and Villain. Over the course of the tournament, they started in 9th, climbed 4 spots to 5th place in Cascade 1, climbed another spot to 4th in Cascade 2, and it was looking like we were going to have a repeat of, potentially a repeat of Prenats 2 and these guys making the finals, but then they had the biggest drop, tied with Cerberus on the last day of 3 positions, landing in 7th place. I guess in terms of notable stats, Jellyhawk had the 3rd highest tag ratio with 1.4. Jellyhawk was Archangel's last line, and he was clearly doing a bloody good job of it. So I guess in terms of how this team played, it was from our experience, it was usually a defensively favored game. They took 2 games off of us. I think we versed them 3 times, and they took 2 games off of us. It was just a very disciplined, well set up. Always in good field pointing spots. Just always got keeping up in the field points, and then Sega and Easy Points were out. Occasionally they would go out and try and get a base together. Sometimes they'd just be by themselves. But overall, I was very impressed with this team. And like I said, after Cascade 2, I was like, man, these guys are on track to end up in finals again. But then, as Runt kind of alluded to, they had finals performance anxiety pooped the bed. Runt, can you give us any extra insight, given they're a home team?
I'll try. We're very focused at the moment on how good your cat drawing is.
Thank you.
Why is it so much better? Your others are great, but it's so much better than everything else. What have you done there? How'd you do that?
So obviously, when I do these drawings and I don't know what that alias is, I just Google it, and then the Google image that came up was a very simple that kind of drawing, and then I just kind of copied it. I don't know. I spent more time on the Shurikitty drawing than I did on the rest of the drawings combined, I think. I kind of just got lost doing it, but I'm not normally very good at drawing, so I was
add it to the portfolio.
Yeah. I'll show this to when I have start an art exhibit or something. That'll be in there.
But yes, this team, I think this sort of 7th, 6th place area is where you start to transition into your very strong pack players. This is a position, I think, although I'm not sure they were too happy with it, but I think it's where the team's pushing their limits to get past. Sort of strategy and home side advantage can only get you so far when you're as fresh a team as Archangels, because remember, they're a 2nd-year team with 2nd and 3rd-year players. They're not sort of at the pack skill levels and experience levels of the teams that they're coming up against. So I think 7th is a solid result. I think if they were a bit better going into the competition, they might have felt a bit better, because they're 9th in round robin. That's way lower than you'd expect, especially on a first day when other teams are getting used to the arena again. They needed to be far better off the bat than they were, essentially. But they still did solid. You've got a team where the skill level is all very equal, and I think that's a really good thing to see, is how you can have players being incapable of substituting in for other people because they're not relying on anyone in particular, and I really like to see that. Their Ascensions run, I will acknowledge, was definitely rough. You've got Spartans who they're underperforming. They're in all 3 of their Archangels games, and sometimes Ascension is just rough like that. You've got a team that by all rights should win every one of those games quite handily in every single one of their Ascensions games, and that sucks for them. But I think they still had the capacity to overcome it. I'm hoping at Nationals that they will really be able to push themselves to break into that top tier solid, but I don't think they should be upset with being that sort of slightly below the absolute top. Like that, they're still well performing it, outperforming expectations, being in that level of games.
Do we pull out the term gatekeepers here?
As in,
Gatekeepers to the top tier. It's the classic old term that people like to throw around.
yeah,
No, I was in a game. It was the finals game with Spartans, us, and them. And what you were talking about, Runt, was noticeable. Like you could feel the difference in experience and just on the packs and the hype. You know, everybody's game lifted. There was a lot of experience between our team and the Spartans team. And it was noticeable that the Archangels hadn't been in a game like that before, just in how they were playing and stuff. So yeah, they had an excellent tournament, and they're just kind of where I feel like that's sixth or seventh was a really good result for them. And yeah, I mean, and Mantis 1.15 tag ratio for the tournament. It's like they've got some players on their team that that performed amazingly throughout the tournament. They should be really happy actually with how they went. Phil?
In terms of points of improvement, I think personally for me, it's something that we've kind of harped on about in a lot of review streams, but basically the idea of you can go from the bottom tier to the middle tier by being really good at like one vague thing. So if you were to say it like offensively and defensively, you can break into the mid tier by being really good at one of those things, right? And this is an example of a team that's really good defensively in those low base games, lots of field points. Easy points Mantis, easy points Sega are very much capable of like being the ones to get that one base. But to really properly break into the top tier, you need to have the ability to do both. And then also the thing that separates, the best from the rest is the ability to do both, but then also more importantly, knowing when to do one over the other. Knowing when to pull the trigger, knowing when to, holster that thing. I think from watching their games and playing against them a few times, if they can add, when they're down, like knowing when to go a bit more aggressive and how they want to do that. I think they could be, a bunch of close games they had. I think they could very much be making those firsts instead. But did either of you guys have anything to add to that?
I think that really summarised it quite well, mate. I think we were green and they were blue in the finals game we played with the Spartans, and what they probably needed to do was do some more of those fast, spontaneous attacks on us that were, unpredictable, in and out, and be efficient. And it was they were just playing. They were kind of like in third gear, and the other two teams were playing in fourth or fifth gear. They were just 1 year behind. But they've now had that experience. They know what is required in order to. They know what's required in order to compete with those teams. So hopefully at nationals they can, take it up one more notch, because they've certainly got the talent on the team to do it. It just takes another level of awareness and speed and organisation, essentially.
Yeah, I'm definitely hoping that these guys can really hone pushing weaknesses. I think whenever a base is like slightly under defended or like a slightly weaker team or anything like that, they can really capitalize on it and push heavy onto them and leverage their consistency to punish other teams for their inconsistency. And I think that does take experience to work out how to do, to work out when there's those slight gaps, when teams have pushed a bit too far, the defense isn't quite cracked up. I want to see them exploiting those cracks, and I think that's going to push that team, if they're going to get into that absolute top tier, which is a lofty goal, but if they're going to want to get there, they're going to need to really find those cracks in those high tier teams.
No whackers. Well, does anyone have anything else to add? Any last appreciations of my Shurikiri drawing? No. No worries.
Wish
Well,
you
yeah.
added the shurikens, but yeah, amazing.
I
Love
don't know.
it,
I have
man.
no idea what Shurikitty is, if I'm honest. I had no idea. I just
Yeah, that's fair.
picked the first image on Google Images that
Yeah.
came up and I copied it. I'll add shurikens next time.
Nice.
All right. Well done to Hobart Archangels. Looking forward to seeing how you do at Nationals. Smash it. 6th place with the What Up Boys. Predicted in 7th place, so they're up 1 from their predictions. On the team, we have Crouchy, Gunner, Celery, Guinea, or Ginny, Yeah, or Morrow, and Lowlands. In terms of positioning, they started round robin in 8th place. Cascade 1, they climbed 4 spots to 4th, which was the highest they got in the tournament, like for them. Cascade 2, they dropped 1 to 5th, and then finals, they dropped 1 more to 6th. In terms of average score, I think they had some of the higher average scores. Any notable stats? Celery had the second highest denies 4 with 1.6, so he was making a bunch of people cry at his base. I wonder how many of those denies 4 was at blue base. Anyway, who wants to talk about the One Up Boys? Run.
Yeah. This is a new One Up team. They're playing standard laser tag, and that's weird to see. But it's a good team to do so. And like, I've said it a bit, but Celery and Crouchy are for something that's much needed on the team, and I think that's just your really consistent brawling, get bases ability. Just they like to shoot lights and shoot bases, and they're very consistent at doing so. And that balances out your chaotic players like your Gunner and Guinea and all that, who are just really sending it with everything. So I think if One Up can hone it in a bit, but still play to their strengths, I'm very keen to see them at Nats. Like, I want One Up to be a finals team again. I think a lot of people do, because they're so much fun to play against and watch, and they make laser tags so interesting to play. But yeah, I think when they were very much figuring out how to play with a new team, because they don't train much. They're in Victoria. It's a sad time ever since COVID over there, and they were just going, let's just play super basic, super get used to playing with other teammates. And I'm hoping that pays off, but we definitely saw them a bit weaker than they probably could have been if they just spent it with their standard play to their strength strat. So
Yeah, Blitz, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just felt like they were the most balanced team I've seen them for I don't know, maybe ever. Yeah, the addition of Crouchy and Celery, they just felt like they were playing. Like, I refed one of their games and they were floating out. They were supporting the defenders were supporting their attackers. Like, if you look at their denials against, it's all in the range, like between 0.5, 0.6 and 0.8. Like, that's kind of where a lot of the top players were sitting. So they were clearly like not doing cowboy shots. They were covering each other well. Their tag ratios were good. Yeah, and they were just really well. It felt like they were really well organized, especially given that they hadn't been training or playing together. They played very little together. I was just really super impressed with what they put together. Yeah, to finish 6th, I thought was a pretty good result for them. But yeah, they were. I didn't pull up the finals games before I had it before here, but I'm pretty sure they weren't too far out of. They were in every game essentially, and they did knock us off in a game as well. And it was like they played really well. We didn't make any mistakes. They just played really well in that game that they beat us. So yeah, hats off to them. I think are they sticking together as this combination for Nats?
Yes.
Yeah, but these guys can trouble some teams. These guys can move if they keep playing like that, and they can get another by finals day, they'll have another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days on the packs, whatever it is that we play before we play finals. Yeah, no doubt they can trouble some teams up in that top group.
Yeah. I personally don't actually have much to add for this team, because I think One Up was another team that we actually just didn't verse ever, or if we did, it was once and it was very early on, and I can't remember it. So I unfortunately can't give much insight myself. But do we have any Anything notable? Any points of improvement or anything?
And I just want to see him let Celery off the leash. Like I know why they didn't this comp and why they were very much focused on playing standard laser tag, but like I just want to see him off the leash when he's just in the mode of just get bases and shoot lights. Like that's when he thrives, and he's an incredibly strong player when he's doing that. So I think when 1UP works out their synergy and works out their new style, I think once they let Celery off the leash and Celery and Crouch, they just go, let's let the new blood like take over kind of thing. Celery and Crouchy can honestly be the strongest players on this team if they're allowed to be. So I'm very keen to see Nationals when they play fully to what I think their strengths might be. And yeah, don't put Celery under defense, even though he does get denials.
Yeah. Butzy, you got any points of improvement for these guys? Or...
Just keep. Not really, actually. I just felt like they played. I felt like they played as good as they could. They put points of improvement for themselves, but I didn't see anything that was noticeably that to improve. I felt like is Crouchy the game controller for them in game?
I think Gunner still is from what I saw.
I thought Guinea and Moro, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe they don't even know.
Not sure.
They roll the dice tomorrow.
I know. Well, he's got a 1.27 base average, so he might have been out on attack along with Gunner. Maybe him and Gunner were going out. But anyway, I thought he was a good addition to the team. Like he's played in the top tier before, so he knows he's strategically sound, and it felt like he was just a good, solid influence on the team. Best of luck to him. I hope they perform, and everybody wants a top tier Melbourne team. So yeehaw, go 1UP.
Yeehaw, go 1UP.